It's a mega episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position this week as I try to cram a whole week's worth of content into one episode. So, what moves should we be making ahead of the Mexico Grand Prix? Let's find out. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. It is Thursday, October 24th. My name is Ewan. On today's episode, I'm going to go through pretty much everything that I normally would in a week with green flag, yellow flag, red flag, then a quick review of Austin. I got my team right here, and then a Mexico Grand Prix preview. It's been crazy this week. Got back from vacation, had some jet lag, had a little bit of sickness. So just going to do one piece of content this week. So it's going to be a pretty long episode. So make sure to check out the timestamps in the description below so you can hop around, kind of watch or listen to whatever you want to watch or listen to. But you can like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on X at F1UNFPL, and that will do it. So here is my team review from the United States Grand Prix in Austin, Texas. 343 points, went up about 2,000 places in the world. Used my extra DRS boost. Did not go as well as I was hoping. The papaya kind of let me down, but it was a sparkling weekend for Ferrari as they went 1-2 on Sunday, showed some pretty good data on Friday, and then fell off a little bit in the sprint, and it was like, what are we going to do here? So I went with the papaya. It has now cost me out of a free transfer of kind of going to Charles Leclerc, which is a little bit disappointed ahead of the Mexico Grand Prix, but it is going to be a normal weekend in Mexico. We're going to have 3 free practice sessions, lots of data. It's a kind of one-off track, as I'll show you in a little bit. But outside of the papaya, guys, Frank Colapinto doing the business again, 0.5 million rise, 9 points. Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu just lagging behind. You got to do what you got to do. This team has exactly 0.0 left in the bank, so it was a little disappointing there. But I did have Ferrari, didn't make the switch to Mercedes based on Friday's data and the sprint qualifying, so that was a nice move. And then McLaren also 80 points there as well. So the constructors went about as well as it could go. But yeah, the decision between Oscar and Charles Leclerc that I was talking about a lot on the YouTube channel and the podcast for the Austin Grand Prix in the preview episodes was kind of a coin flip, and it just worked out. That turn 1 was kind of, all it needed. And Charles Leclerc just kind of ran off into distance. Lando was struggling, really should have passed Max and got a 5-second time penalty. And we all know there's been a lot of debate about what is going on there. But overall, it's been a couple of strong weeks coming off the Singapore Grand Prix into the United States Grand Prix, and we are bang smack in the middle of a triple header here, Mexico Grand Prix and then Brazil next week. Next week will be a little bit more usual for the content purposes, but yeah, this week's just been a little bit crazy. But that is my team review for the United States Grand Prix. Going over to the Mexico Grand Prix preview here, Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, 4.304 kilometers, 71 laps, 17 corners, 3 DRS zones. First Grand Prix here was in 1963, so we're looking at 61 years, if I can do math well. So really a one-off track. People are pretty split about whether they like it, whether they hate it. I mean, it's definitely something different to the F1 calendar because the altitude is so high. The cars kind of have performed differently. So it is really nice that we will get 3 free practices to analyze the data here and just kind of see who's going to be strong, who's going to be weak. If you remember this time last year, AlphaTauri came on. This is kind of when they started their stretch of like dominating at the end of the season, and it went really well for them. Yuki Tsunoda came on strong. Liam Lawson or Daniel Ricciardo also in the AlphaTauri as well. So we'll have to watch out. Can VCarb do that as well? Especially Liam Lawson kind of off a very strong performance in the United States Grand Prix. Going over here to the C3, C4, C5 tires for the weekend. So the 3 softest compounds in F1. We'll see what kind of difference that makes in Sunday's race. Weather should be kind of cloudy, but mostly sunny and kind of cool temperatures compared to what we saw at the Austin Grand Prix. The United States Grand Prix, 23 degrees Celsius on Friday, 22 on Saturday and Sunday. Doesn't look like there's going to be any rain for us to worry about there. So it should be a pretty regular weekend in F1 Fantasy, which after the hecticness of a sprint weekend is going to be much needed. Hopefully we can make some more well-informed decisions for our lineups there. Going over here to F1 Big Data, this is just one data point. He usually does like a similarity thing, and he's just kind of saying that Mexico City is a one-off, might be like kind of close to Monaco and Marina Bay with like the ultimate downforce needed, but also like the arrow is kind of weird up here. So, like I said, I'm just going to preach this all episode, and then over the next 2 days on my X account at F1UNFPL, that we really just need to see the data here. There's no really like early inklings. I know Mercedes kind of do well in cooler weather. F1 Fantasy Hub Rob said that earlier in a tweet this week, so we'll have to watch out for that. Mercedes could be an option for some of us who are looking to maybe build some budget towards the end of the season, try to get an extra guy in for an extra DRS boost chip at Brazil or Qatar coming up in 2 of the next 4 races. So we could look at that, as now Ferrari is an A tier asset in the constructors. They will rise like an A tier asset. No more huge gains for the red team from Italy. Going over to what happened before lineup lock on Saturday, if I remember correctly, F1 Fantasy Tools launched a new tool. It is fantastic. I have not stopped looking at this thing since they launched it. It's pretty much their elite data, where they've got the top 500 teams from the global league and the top 500 teams from their Patreon league, where if you sign up, you can get some extra features that they've got on there. I'm a member. No ads or anything here. Just like if you really enjoy F1 Fantasy, and if you're like a pretty competitive manager, like it is pretty much a must have. I love this. It's the easiest kind of subscription that I have in F1 Fantasy. So would definitely recommend their website. But yeah, they've got chip data, driver data, like what went up, what went down. And I'm just going to analyze it here. You can go to their website where it is very nicely spread out, but I could not fit that all on one screen. So I tried to kind of summarize it here. So chip usage, so they show what chips were used for each race, and it's really cool to see like where everyone went, what weekend was very popular for a certain chip and this chip, and like it shows you how much people have left to use their chips. So in the United States Grand Prix, extra DRS, 24% of the top 500 used their extra DRS boost. That was the 3rd highest chip usage weekend of the season. Limitless was the most popular, taking the top 2 spots in China and Miami, back-to-back races in the 5th and 6th races of the season. But the extra DRS boost, 24% of teams in the global 500 used it that week, and that has been the 3rd most popular. But in the top 500, over 41 or just under 42% of teams have the extra DRS boost remaining. So a lot of us were thinking that Coda would be a very popular place to use it, but with the kind of mixed results from Friday and the sprint qualifying, I think a lot of people got scared off. I could have been one of those teams, but I just still kind of like believed in McLaren. I figured that they would eventually get together. I still think they're going to get it together. 3 practices this weekend to kind of understand the new upgrades, which apparently they are bringing more upgrades to Mexico as well. Could be track specific, so we'll have to figure that out. Today is like media day there, and Friday as well. We'll figure out some more stuff there, but they seem to really be going for it, really pushing Lando. So hopefully the 3 extra practices will pick up Papaya, and the managers who invested in them last weekend in Coda will be rewarded maybe in Mexico. Limitless got 7%, 5.8% of the top 500 teams have that chip remaining. So a lot of people have already used it, over 94% of teams. Autopilot got some usage here. That probably helped out quite a bit between Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris if you went with those 2 guys in your team. Final fix, 4%, no negative, 1.6%, and wildcard, 0.4%. And you can see on the right-hand column here, on the YouTube channel. So if you're on the podcast, if you're listening on the podcast side, you can just flip over to the YouTube channel to see this table here. Extra DRS, 41.8% of teams in the top 500 still have it. Limitless, 5.8. Autopilot, 37.2. 51% of teams, or 51.6% of teams still have their final fix, which I think is pretty interesting, as we're 5 races to go. No negative, 18.8%, and wildcard, 19.8%. So just some interesting chip usage data from the top 500 in the world. And they also have driver selection. So that kind of tells you like what the template is in the top 500, where a differential can be made, that sort of stuff. And then the most added and the most dropped. So when I get back into doing the race review episodes, this is kind of where I will be analyzing that data for F1 fantasy purposes. But the most selected for the United States Grand Prix this weekend were Colapinto, Lando Norris, Alexander Albon, Oscar Piastri, and Nico Hulkenberg. Colapinto in 94 or 90.4% of teams, but also was one of the most dropped drivers, 7.4% of teams. And I'll have to ask F1 Fantasy Tools this on X, but I'm wondering if that data is skewed. Like if some people used like the limitless chip in the top, like there was 7% of teams that used the limitless chip. I wonder if that's where Colapinto maybe faded out of their teams there. Most added drivers were Verstappen, Lawson, Russell, Sainz, and Piastri. So pretty good overall. Russell with a banging drive on Sunday, going from pit lane to P6. Fantastic result for him. And then most dropped were Albon, Norris, Colapinto, Tsunoda, and Charles Leclerc. I know quite a lot of people that went from Charles Leclerc to Oscar Piastri. That did not work out that well. That was really a tough call in F1 Fantasy. So tough luck if that kind of went against you. But maybe McLaren can fight back here. Well, I'm really interested to see Friday's practice data. It is a little bit of a weird time here in Germany. It's going to be kind of like almost overnight practice data, so I won't really get a handle on it until Saturday morning, and then the sims will come out, and yeah, a late night kind of lineup lock as well. So plenty to kind of tick over and look over on Saturday. But this is the most selected, the most added, and the most dropped drivers from the United States Grand Prix, thanks to the data from F1FantasyTools.com. Going over here to green flag, yellow flag, red flag. I usually do a whole episode on this, but like I said, this is a mega episode this week for F1 Fantasy Pole Position. So Norris, Sainz, Russell, Gasly, Albon are the 5 drivers I nominated here. Norris gets the yellow flag. Most people have him, as I'm looking at it right now on the fantastic F1 Fantasy Tools website. Norris is an 85.6% of F1 fantasy teams in the top 500. So, like, if you don't have him, that probably means that you went up to max because you have a really big budget in the top 500, or you kind of just like, I mean, one guy in my mini league, my home mini league, I looked at his team after lineup lock on Saturday, and he had no McLaren. He had gone triple Ferrari with Red Bull, and it was a fantastic move. Even though I used my extra DRS boost, he still outscored me without using a chip. So great job by him. But yeah, so Lando, if you have him, you're not going to sell him. If you don't have him, you can maybe buy him, but you may just have max, and who knows what's going to happen in Mexico at all. Red Bull usually do quite well here. So yeah, Lando Norris kind of gets the yellow flag for me. Carlos Sainz and George Russell kind of in the same category here. Like if you are still in budget building mode, I like both of these options. It'll probably come down to a coin flip on Friday and Saturday's data to kind of see, like, does Ferrari look stronger? Does Mercedes look stronger? George had a fantastic drive on Sunday. The vibes for Lewis Hamilton are way, way down. Just a terrible weekend for the 7-time world champion. But Russell kind of picked Mercedes up on Sunday all by himself. Pierre Gasly gets the red flag just because he's like, I'd much rather have like Alexander Albon, who gets the yellow flag here. I'm not super keen on buying either of those options, but yeah, Gasly is more of a Alpine or just a mess, so I don't really trust them at all from an F1 fantasy standpoint. And Albon is like, if you're in a weird kind of price point where you don't need to go down to like Valtteri or Zhou Guanyu or Colapinto, but you can't get up to like Nico Hulkenberg or Liam Lawson anymore, Albon is a fine hold. I'm not necessarily interested in buying him either, just because it does seem that Colapinto is outperforming him at this point in the season. It's now 4 races under our belt where Colapinto is kind of putting it to Albon a little bit. So very interesting to see how that will kind of progress over the course of the season. I don't think Albon is in any danger of like losing his 2025 seat, as some people are theorizing. But in general, Colapinto is the better Williams asset to have right now. So if you have him, you don't have to sell him. But I'm not actively looking to like maneuver my team around to buy Alexander Albon, so he gets the yellow flag. So just a very short and sweet version of green flag, yellow flag, red flag, but I will be back with a full episode next week. Keep going here. I lost my mouse. There we go. Frantic finish, the schedule. We are 5 races to go. So Mexico is this weekend, and then Brazil is the following weekend. That's the end of the first triple header. Then we get like another weird 3-week break, and then it's Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. So get a little bit of a breather after Brazil to kind of prep for the final 3 races of the season. And it's also very nice to know that you can only use one chip per week in F1 Fantasy. So if you are one of these teams that, I mean, if you have all 6 of your chips remaining, like you're not going to be able to use all of them now. But if you have 5 chips remaining, you really need to plan out what chip you want to use. Ideally, if you have the Limitless and the extra DRS boost chip left, you would be using those in a sprint weekend because those are just places where you can gain more points and it kind of makes the chip more powerful, especially now with only like 5% of managers in the top 500 having a Limitless chip left. That could be a huge differential down the stretch, the final stretch of the season. But I got through most of the content here, so I'm just going to flip over to some quick team selection. So before I get into my team selection real quick, I did just want to show what the F1 Fantasy Tools website looks like with this elite data. It is fantastic. Just look at all this stuff. You can see who was added more, picked more. They've got the Global 500. They got Patreon 500. You can even do constructors picks, which I didn't really talk about. But yeah, McLaren and Ferrari were the most popular. However, Mercedes did come in. They added about 14% of managers, or 8% of managers last week. And it was kind of just a popular switch from Ferrari and to Mercedes, and Red Bull is one of those options as well. But if we go over here to my T1 team, like I said, just outside the top 7,000 right now. So we're looking here, 3 free transfers. I literally just did not make a move for Coda. I just kept the team the same. You know, it is what it is. But now I can't get to Charles Leclerc without making some like really major adjustments to the squad. I've got 3 free transfers. Depending on the data that we're looking at on Friday and Saturday, there could be some drastic changes coming. I still got the autopilot chip left, so yeah, but really, like, I've got the 3 back marker assets here, and I've got the 2 papaya. I'm 0.1 short of Charles Leclerc, which is what will happen if you know, that is what it is. So the only way I could really get to Charles is to move Ferrari down to Mercedes if the silver arrows look strong. And then that gives me enough of a boost to get up to Charles Leclerc. It still doesn't really fix any of these other problems because it'll leave me with 0.8 in the bank. So won't be able to get to Albon or anything like that. So if I want to do something a little bit more drastic, I could get rid of McLaren and bring in Mercedes, and that would give me 2.4 million. And that does make it easier. That means I can get up to Alexander Albon here, or Pierre Gasly, or Yuki Tsunoda. So if VCarb kind of showed their form from last year's Mexico Grand Prix all of a sudden, that could be an interesting differential. Like 7,000 in the world is really good rank. Would be pretty happy with that at the end of the year. Would like to crack like the top 5,000, obviously. So if the data is there and I'm feeling a little bit frisky, I could use my 3 free transfers to bring in Charles Leclerc, Yuki Tsunoda, and Mercedes. That would have to be, I'm just not going to go away from Lando Norris as the 2X guy just at the end of the year. Like, every time I seem to go away from Lando, he comes back to bite me. So I'm not counting on him to win Driver of the Day in Mexico. I'm pretty sure that will be Sergio Perez, which could be an interesting differential if Red Bull looks strong. You know, he's probably going to win Driver of the Day. Red Bull is probably going to put him in a position to, like, I mean, especially after last year where he DNF'd on the first lap and it was such a disappointment for the home crowd and just in general, the race kind of like lost some of its oomph when Sergio went out. It'll be interesting to see if Red Bull does kind of want Sergio to have a great weekend. They're obviously going to be prioritizing Max because he is still in a championship fight. That fight is getting less and less by the week. He is getting closer and closer to a 4th straight drivers championship. So great job by him. He had a fantastic weekend defending like no other in that Sunday Grand Prix. But this is a little bit of a differential lineup I could look at here. I'm not super keen on Yuki. I think Liam has probably like passed him by a little bit already. I mean, it's only one race, but Lawson was just like an absolute pro out there. It was kind of like going toe to toe with Fernando Alonso, like in the sprint race. So the vibes around Yuki are not great, but this is a slight differential option that I could go with. I have 3 free transfers, so I don't really mind it. And yeah, if like Ferrari is looking super strong, like I'm not going to move away from Lando, like I said, but if Ferrari looks strong again, I will try to bring in Charles Leclerc. Possibly another move I could do is just downgrade Oscar to like Carlos Sainz, and that would help quite a bit. I'm not entirely sure where that would leave me in budget with Zhou Guanyu. I don't think it would be enough to kind of get it would be enough to get out of the Zhou Guanyu business. I could still get to Pierre Gasly or Alexander Albon. So we need to see some convincing data there. So that is another option as well for my T1 squad. But yeah, like I said, it's all going to come down to the Friday data. I'm kind of locked into like if I want to get to Charles Leclerc, if I feel strongly about that, it's still probably a coin flip. So like totally restructuring my team just to get in Leclerc when Piastri is just as good, especially if McLaren looks good in FP1, FP2, FP3. Like that's probably not going to be an option to me. I will probably just end up burning more transfers and having 3 for Brazil, which if I am thinking about it, I do want to have as much flexibility in my squad for these upcoming sprints now that I don't have Limitless, I don't have extra DRS boost. It means that like if I have 3 free transfers, I can kind of get closer to a squad that maybe some of those other teams can get to, or like a Limitless squad can get to as well. So kind of try to match those and go like toe to toe with them in F1 Fantasy and not lose too much ground to the teams that are going to be losing the chips. But yeah, like I said, my thoughts are kind of all over the place with this T1 squad. I could go anywhere. I could do absolutely nothing either. But let's go over to a team with way more cost cap and that is doing way better in the world with my T3 squad. So here is the T3 squad, 134.1 million in the bank, top 400 in the world, which is fantastic. I used the extra DRS boost on this team as well, and I actually brought in Charles Leclerc instead of Oscar Piastri, and it worked out quite swimmingly. So the lineup here is Norris, Leclerc, Colapinto, Liam Lawson, Zhou Guanyu with Red Bull and McLaren. Really strong spot for this team as well, kind of like covering a bunch of the bases. The only kind of audible I would have to do here is if Mercedes looks super strong, I'd have to figure out a way to bring those guys into this squad. But I mean, the easy sacrifice would be Red Bull down to Mercedes. That would leave me with quite a lot of money in the bank, and I could get all the way out of the Sauber business into pretty much almost any back marker that I wanted. Kevin, or not back marker, but like midfield team here. Kevin Magnussen, Esteban Ocon, Nico Hulkenberg, like all strong options. So if Mercedes look really good, I can switch it up and just, I'm going to keep Franco Colapinto in all my lineups for the rest of the season because he is just the budget building king right now. 4 straight races, 4 straight 0.5 million price rises. Doesn't seem to get phased by a lot. He's been in the points a couple of races, finished 11th and 12th in the other couple of races. So just really solid driving, really like taking to F1 quite well, which is really surprising just with like how little anyone knew about him when he was announced as Logan Sargent's replacement. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be switching with this squad. I probably won't swap to Oscar Piastri. It's like if Red Bull looks strong, I'm just going to keep Red Bull in there. Like having the top 2 constructors and then 2 of the strongest driving assets in the game. Like if you go to the season points, like Lando and Charles right there. The thing that could kind of switch it up is I could probably move down and get up to max if I don't trust Checo this weekend. But the 10 extra points for like, well, 10 extra points for driver of the day only goes to the driver. But yeah, just kind of, if I'm not sure about Checo Perez at all, I could downgrade Red Bull down to Ferrari. And then I would just bring in Mr. Max Verstappen. And that would leave me with enough money here to, oh, I'd have to actually go down to Mercedes instead, or I'd have to kind of finagle Liam Lawson down as well to get into that kind of area. But I've only got 2 free transfers. This does have the wild card left. So like if it is just looking spectacular for Max, I could just activate that because as we go towards the end of the season, kind of the wild card, like if you want to save 10 points here, like I think that becomes a viable reason. Like earlier on this season, like I would be more willing to take a hit instead of use the wild card because you kind of want to save it for a huge swing kind of thing. But now that we're into the final 5 races, saving 10 points could really like save you 1,000 places or 10 places, just depending on wherever you are in the world. So you do have to kind of just be like, okay, I'll just use that. And then you'll be out of chips. But yeah, having Charles Leclerc in was fantastic last weekend. I don't think it, like I said, is really going to come down to this Friday data, what the moves are. So I haven't confirmed this yet, haven't really set anything up, but like I will probably either like post a video or do like a quick live stream on Saturday morning to kind of just discuss the thoughts from FP1 and FP2 and whether we get any sims out of F1 Fantasy Tools, 11fi, all those fun spots in F1 Fantasy. But yeah, this is the T3 squad, really good spot, 2 transfers. So don't have the flexibility of my T1 team, but it's top 400 in the world. It's got a huge cost cap, so it can kind of go wherever I would want. But yeah, I think I'll probably keep Red Bull in, assuming that they are looking quite strong. And that just leaves me, I can just keep Charles Leclerc in there. It's not a problem at all. And yeah, just Zhou Guanyu would be the final driver for my T3 squad. One last reminder for lineup lock this Saturday, 3 p.m. local time, 10 p.m. UK time, and 5 p.m. USA Eastern. I'm pretty sure those times are accurate. There is a time change going on this weekend. It's going to be Sunday morning. So, like, depending on where you are in the world, like, your time zone might be different. So, just double check those times on like Saturday to make sure that they're not going to change overnight. I think this weekend is Europe, and then next weekend is the US. So, definitely keep an eye on that for wherever you are in the world in terms of lineup locks. Don't get caught out at all, but should be a fairly fun weekend in Mexico. It's going to be nice to have 3 free practices worth of data before we make our F1 fantasy decision. Hit me up on X at F1U and FPL if you have any questions before the sims come out, before we get racing on Friday. But I will be tweeting out anything I see during the free practices. I'll probably be watching those live because they're later in the day. So I will be back from work so I can actually watch them at home, which will be quite nice. But yeah, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. All likes and subscribes greatly appreciated. Nearly at 550 subscribers. So if you help me get over the hump there, that would be greatly appreciated. And yeah, I will put out some sort of video on Saturday. Don't know if it's a video or a live stream. And then next week I will be back into my regularly scheduled content with a race review, green flag, yellow flag, team selection, all that fun stuff. But once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.